Welcome back, my awesome people. I am honored to be here for the second time on this channel, Eric Pachman. Now, the best part is Eric was the main chief analyst at Bancreek. I'm sure if you saw our first interview, you will see that we were talking a whole different topic, whole different subject matter. We were talking more about finance, data visualizations. However, Eric has gone into his own creating his own firm. He has created Data for the People. Now, Data for the People is more about looking at what is actually happening, not from a surface level, but we're deep diving into US's SNAP program, poverty, unemployment, and not only how does that affect the economic and stock market crash or stock market movements, but also how does that work in just in our regular society? Because as you know, a lot of things are happening these days. Currently, United States is their hands are in a few places, but those hands could have been helping its own citizens. But we're gonna dive right into it, and I don't want to ruin the introduction. I want Eric to definitely do the introduction. So, Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jacob. I'm so happy to be back and talk to you about this. You are the first person that I am talking to publicly about all the work that I put out. In hindsight, releasing like a very complex study connecting SNAP and poverty and food assistance and everything the week before Christmas, I don't recommend it. But now, I'm coming back at it again pretty hard here in January, and you're the first person I'm talking to, and I couldn't be any more grateful that you have me on.
Well, I do appreciate that because I personally, I love being socially aware, economically aware, and honestly, I'm here in Canada. We're not doing so great either, especially when it comes to
Mm.
unemployment, when it comes to poverty, the unhoused. There's a lot of issues that Canada's going through, and I bet that because the United States has such a bigger population, it is probably going through it a lot more worse. So we would love to deep knowledge this because
Yeah,
not many people are talking about it. This is a
yeah.
topic that maybe you might hear through the, grapevine, but we're going to talk about it now because we're not going to wait for the tipping point. Hopefully this interview sparks other conversations with other people, whether they're in healthcare, whether they're in social work, whether in
Mhm.
unemployment status, whatever it is. I think this conversation will definitely be kind of a leader in the future conversations. So, Eric, let's just get right into it. So, Eric, for those that did not watch the first interview, can you tell us
Yeah.
about yourself and what first inspired you to get into finance and data?
Yeah. So yeah, I'll kind of give you my path to this, which reads, I think I mentioned this last time, a lot like Forrest Gump. Like I've just kind of been all over the place and, kind of blindly walking around trying to figure out what makes me happy in life. I'm a chemical engineer originally. I worked in engineering for a bit, worked in management there, went to Harvard Business School, came out of there, as a sell side equity research analyst at Morgan Stanley. Did that for about a year and a half, went over to the buy side, worked, directly managing money for a wealthy family, left that, moved down closer to live by my family, ended up working for the railroad, which kind of seems like it was out of the blue, but hey, they were hiring. Did a bunch of, that's where I started really doing a lot of data visualization work for the railroad, trying to understand their operations and where the congestion was. Ended up going and literally working out on the railroad as the assistant chief engineer, trying to figure out, where do we have to build sidings and do. Anyway, did work there. Eventually got an offer to manage pharmacies. Again, totally out of the blue, but it was in Dayton, Ohio, which is where my wife's family was. And so I'm like, sure, let's do this. And so that got me into the whole pharmacy world and ended up, managing pharmacies, but figuring out like the whole pharmacy benefit manager spread pricing scheme, like all like the rotten shit underneath drug pricing within this country, that literally has only gotten worse since I exposed it in 2018 or 2016, I think. Um, Started working for the managing the pharmacies, but eventually moved on from that, then created a nonprofit and created a for-profit. Basically, the point is I've done a lot of shit. Eventually, I got tired of doing that. And so then I moved over, got back into the investing game, but the data is constantly calling me. I mean, no matter, I try to run away from it, and it lures me back. And so I created visualizations on inflation and jobs, which we talked about last time, that are living for free on bancreek.com. So hopefully your listeners have already used those to kind of get a leg up, understanding what's going on with inflation and jobs, which, by the way, jobs comes out this Friday, so that will be updated then. But I mean, I'm about to be 47 now, and I've checked off all the boxes like entrepreneurship, and I'm not like bragging or trying to be cocky here. I'm just saying that like none of them led to lasting happiness. Like there's just something wrong with all of them for me. And I think it was because I was largely just focused on, myself, and like, how does this make me happy? How does this get the next promotion for me, my ego, that kind of thing. And it just was this kind of unfulfilling, I felt like I'm just going in circles, like on a hamster wheel. And the older that I've gotten, and, I've just realized that, I want to be of service, and I have these really random skill sets, like super arbitrary, knowing how to tell stories with data. And there's so much data out there that like I literally could throw a dart at a dartboard and find a project when it comes to social justice and inequality. And these are topics that really matter to me, because like I very much believe that, I was born to a certain family in a certain time, and had certain privileges, and have a certain skin color, and had certain opportunities in my life. That could have been very different if I was born down the street to a different family. And so why am I any different than those people? And why can't I stand up for them now that I've kind of gotten halfway through my life and have checked off all those boxes and realized that none of them made me happy? So data for the people really is the way for me to try to figure out professionally, how do I be of service with my skills? I don't really know anything right now. I'm calling it a hobby because I don't even want to think about how do I make this into a business, because I feel like it pollutes it a little bit. Like I'm just trying to do work that is meaningful to me, and I think can directly lead to policy reform and education of the American population. And then just see where it goes. I mean, I'm fortunate where I live in Dayton, Ohio. It's super cheap here. I don't need to make much money. So like, I just want to, go down this path, expose this stuff, be of service in the best way that I can with the skills that I have. And, I had to start somewhere. So why not start with food assistance? Why not start with SNAP? That was, everyone was talking about that, towards the end of November, when we were in the middle of the longest government shutdown ever, and we were going to stop giving people food stamps, in America. So that was my thinking going into that, was like, if we're going to just like shut down food stamps, I got to put out some dashboard so like communities can be like, how much should I donate to my local food pantry to kind of cover the gap so people can keep eating? That was the initial thought behind this dashboard. And I mean, there really wasn't any rhyme or reason behind why I started here, besides like that what was in the news. And I realized there was a whole bunch of data that was just untouched that I could start playing with.
I absolutely love what you said. I love your journey, because as investors, people in finance, people who are, we're always looking out for ourselves. As we, go through all of these, we check off all the boxes, and then it's still we're not fulfilled. We're not happy as we thought we would be. And I love that you took the other route, where you're like, okay, I'm not really doing this for, elevating profits and creating profits. It's more of actually a form of giving back, because we don't have data visualizations. People don't talk about it. It's not even on Bloomberg or any economics, news media or channel. And so through your platform, we're able to actually see that visualization. And I really do know that it will actually create some policy reform, because a lot of things are horribly, horribly going wrong, both in the United States and Canada. And so back in Bancreek, you started with the visualizations. Are the visualizations now elevated and more, I would say, leveled up now that it's part of data for the people? Or is it very similar and you have the rights to those visualizations?
No, they're far better. And I mean, I see the reason why is because like the investing public is all, and I mean, I'm not trying to offend anybody here. It is what it is. Like people don't care about history as much.
They really don't.
They don't. They care about like what happened now. Like so the jobs data is going to come out on Friday, and it's going to be like, what does it say now? And like, doesn't really matter what it says. It just matters the perception of what most of the majority of people thinks it says. And then I know if I know what that's going to be, I know if I should buy or sell it, right? And so as a data analyst, where I really want to dig in, I'm pretty limited with that. Now I move over and I start to look at like, how do I try to lift up people, that have been disenfranchised for decades upon decades upon decades. Now all of a sudden I have decades of data that I can pull from down to the county level. Like an investor does not care if I talk about what's going on in Selma County or if I talk about what's going on in Greene County where I live. They could give a shit. Like it's not, meaningful to the market, right? It's all the highest level stuff, which really tells us nothing from a policy standpoint. Whereas now all of a sudden, I can dig down to the most granular level and tell stories on the county level. And so that's where I'm really going. I mean, and there's so many county level databases, whether it's at census.gov or USDA or the BLS. I mean, there are so many, and there's decades worth of data that you can go back and look at trends. Like, for example, you can look at SNAP usage, so food assistance usage. And I don't think that many people know that it peaked around 2014, 2013 from the impact of the Great Recession. So there's the finance world, which is like by 2012, I think S&P 500, and correct me if I'm wrong, by 2011, 2012, the S&P 500 had taken out its 2008 high. So it's like, we're good, don't worry about us. But that was just the start for people that are living kind of between 100% and 200% of the federal poverty level. So people that are like the working poor or even in poverty, they were still suffering more and more and more. And so like every time we go into one of these recessions, people talk about this kind of K-shaped economy where like the wealthy just get wealthier, coming out of these kind of step change events or these kind of big shocks, and the poor get poorer. And like that's exactly what happened. And like I can see that data very clearly and can, communicate these things that really policymakers should be aware of. And so I say this is better only because it can touch people's lives where you live. It's not like this broad amorphous thing where you're trying to be like, the Warren Buffett beauty show of like in the finance world, we're not even trying to tell you what happened. Like I tried to tell people what happened for the better part of the last 2 years. It doesn't matter what happened. It just matters what people perceive is happening. And if you could think of what are people going to perceive is happening in the future, that's the truth, not what the real truth is. And I just got sick of that stuff. Like whereas this is real truth that can be enacted upon, can be actionable, can be handed to people that are really looking to kind of make positive policy change and education. Like, I mean, I really do. And hopefully we can talk about this a little bit more. Like there's such an education void in this country. And I'm not sure if it's the same in Canada right now, but I know that it's in this country. And you look at people that are suffering like the worst. Like I can pinpoint counties that have been living, 20% of the population has been living in poverty for, 20, 30 years right now. And I can show you how they are voting against their best interest. They are voting for politicians in their county, locally and statewide, that are taking away their food assistance, making their lives harder. But they don't know that if they go across the border from, say, Alabama to Georgia, they could be living in an equally Republican county, but they have local politicians that care about food benefits. And so like that awareness of like, you don't have to suffer, right? Like other people that are exactly like you, no matter what color, they are not suffering as much of you just randomly because of their zip code. Like that was kind of just eye-opening and shocking to me. And that's why I think it's so actionable. It's a very, very nuanced and complicated story. Like I can't boil this down to like a 30-second like video to post on Instagram. I tried and it failed, right? I mean, I have to have these conversations with you and like, or long form kind of writing or whatever. So people can go in there and be like, oh shit, like I didn't know that, this county separated from this county has like a completely different profile as far as how hard it is to get the food assistance. Why is that the case? Like what local barriers are in place? And why can't I stand up for myself and say, no, this is not okay? Like if I lived like 10 miles away, I would have an easier life. Right. So I mean, like the data is there, and that's why it's so powerful and more powerful than the Bancreek stuff, not for investors, but for people that need to advocate for themselves or those that are advocating for those people that can't advocate for themselves.
Yeah, and 2 points to that. The first point, I have never even thought of looking at my local whenever I'm doing anything. I've always been looking at, the well, provincial, aka state, and then federal, of course. And then the second point is that when you're looking at these data and visualizations, it really, really pinpoints what is happening, especially when it comes to, as you said, right? Just 10 miles, 20 miles, maybe 10 minutes away, you're living a whole different life because of the policies and the politicians and what they believe that is best for their people. And so for those that don't know what SNAP is, SNAP
Yeah.
is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. If you're my age or around my age, you probably heard of food stamps back in the days, but of course we don't call them that anymore. Eric, when we're looking at SNAP currently, is it having a positive or negative effect on the people? Because in the past few years, it seems like the economic data looks very, very strong.
Yeah.
However, Snap is kind of being used a little bit more. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so the devil's in the details, right? And I mean, I hope that if people really want to know that answer and experience that answer, they go and they look at my visualizations and they see how things have changed over time. So the SNAP program is being utilized considerably more in states that are controlled by Democrats. So, and when I say controlled by Democrats, and for the Canadian listeners and everything, or even like me, like I didn't know anything about this before I started this project. There's something called a trifecta, which there are three branches of state government. This is not federal government, this is state government. And if one party controls all three of those branches of government, that's called a trifecta. That basically means there's unilateral control. Republicans and or Democrats can do whatever they want. If there's not unified control, it's divided. So my entire analysis, I realized like the number one key variable that was determining SNAP usage was this trifecta status. So if you had, and this was especially kind of coming out of 2010, which we can talk a little bit about that later and what happened in 2010, because it was really a landmark, politically within America. But coming out of 2010, what you saw was, after a couple years after that, states that were controlled by Republican trifectas. So you can think of like a Texas or a Florida. Florida's not great. Florida's actually doing a good example. They're a little bit of an outlier. But like an Alabama, a Mississippi, a Kansas, a Kentucky, well, Kentucky's not, but states like that, normally in the South, those states largely restricted SNAP. And this is very important to note. It's a federal program, but the state has control over it, right? So the state has so many variables that they can flip switches on, right? So federally, they say, hey, if you live at 130% of the federal poverty line or below, you should qualify for SNAP, right? By the way, the federal poverty line in this country in US dollars is just under $19,000 for an individual. So think
Wow.
about that. Like, I mean, think about trying to live on $19,000 a year. So 30% above that, which is still not a lot of money, right? So if you're up to that amount, you should qualify for SNAP. And read the report if you want the details, but that's kind of like, it would be very simple if it was just that. But then the government is like, we're going to give states the ability to do all sorts of different, like, restrictions or easing of restrictions based on, do you want to put red tape on? Do you want to have asset restrictions? Like, here's one. If you have a car, Jacob, that works, say your grandfather gave you a car and it's worth like, I mean, used car prices are pretty high right now. So say it's like $15,000. You won't get SNAP here. In a Republican state, you will fail the asset test and they'll be like, you are not, it doesn't even matter if you make $15,000 a year. Since you have that $15,000 car, you are too wealthy to be on
Wow.
SNAP. Whereas a state like Oregon or Massachusetts or Illinois, they have decided to waive the asset test. And so they're like, no, you should have the right to take that car from your grandfather and drive to and from work. But if you still are working poor, well, you should qualify for SNAP. This is the state's decision. And in some cases, counties can make these decisions. So what you saw Democratic states increase their SNAP usage, but it's not because their poverty rates were going up. In fact, poverty rates were going down largely. But
Mm.
they're just basically saying, like, this is working. Our poverty rates are going down. we're just going to keep increasing it. It's not a lot of money. I mean, this is like $190 a month per person, right? So it's like this is not like breaking the bank. So, a state like Massachusetts, while their poverty rate's declining, they're continuing to expand SNAP to the point where I think right now, or the latest data, they're about 150% is the ratio, the number of people on SNAP divided by the number of people in poverty. So that's good. They're covering over 50% more of that. Whereas you have a state like Wyoming, that's 49%. So forget that you should be getting SNAP if you are making up to 130% of the poverty level, right? Wyoming's not even covering 50% of the people that live in poverty. And that's because it's very difficult to administer on a rural basis. And they have a lot of rural counties. They have all these asset restrictions. Like they're basically putting up all sorts of red tape and barriers to people to get it, where they're like throwing up their hands and they're like, screw it. Like, I'm not even going to try, So what basically
Is it
I'm
because of the
showing,
misconceptions? Like, is it because they might have a view of SNAP recipients? Is
yeah.
that why?
Yeah, I mean, look, Rick, right now in the media, there's this narrative, and it's not untrue, that SNAP is being abused and it's this fraudulent program, right? That was one of the things that kind of led me to do this. It's like, I'm not saying, I can't tell you there's not fraud in SNAP. There clearly is some level of fraud in SNAP. But the question is what is the acceptable amount of fraud? Because I don't know, I'm a chemical engineer originally. There's a certain amount of operational error you have to accept in any process, like period. You can't accept 100% perfection with any process. There has to be a certain amount of error rate, like widgets
It's
that
like
you're going to
it's like
throw
a
out.
restaurant whenever they have
Yeah,
products, there's like a usage waste, like a burn rate. They know they might
exactly.
have to lose 5 to 10% of their products because of
Yeah,
spoiling or anything like that.
yeah, yeah. So like a state like the Republican narrative, and I don't subscribe to Republican or Democrat. I'm just telling you the Republican narrative is that there's all this fraud. And so we're going to put up more restrictions, which theoretically on paper do make sense, right? Like we're going to make you fill out more of these documents until you've put yourself in the shoes of someone who needs the SNAP assistance. Like I'll give you an example. Like this is a real life example from someone that I know. Ohio has work requirements. Like some states waive the work requirements too, or they don't have as strict work requirements. Ohio has work requirements, and you have to recertify that you're working or trying to get a job or whatever in order to be on SNAP. Well, I have a friend who had a very, very high risk pregnancy. So a lot of complications potentially. And she lost her job and she was like working kind of as a contractor. So she wasn't bringing in any money. So she goes to the website, tries to get SNAP, and the state is like, sorry, you're not working. And she's like, but my doctor said I have to be on bed rest. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my baby. Doesn't matter. There's no exception for that. So, like on paper, yeah, sure, you should work, right? Until the rubber meets the road and you look at different people's individual circumstances and where they're living, and you realize that these all just become barriers that are erected that are ultimately going to continue to lower the uptake or the usage of the SNAP program, which is very much needed. So, like, it's very hard to tell you that there is no fraud. There clearly is fraud, but it's like to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Should we throw the baby out? Like if you want to completely eliminate fraud, kill all of SNAP. Easy, done, right? But then you have 41 million people in this country, 42 million people in this country that will lose SNAP benefits. And then what happens to them? I mean, you clearly have case studies and examples of states that have enhanced their SNAP coverage and their poverty rates have gone down. Like, I mean, so it's really a nuanced discussion. And what I was looking to do was to bring context to this. So is there fraud? Maybe, sure. Are there problems? Should there be restrictions? Maybe. But all I can tell you is that, if we're covering only 60 or 70% of the people living in poverty, when this is a program that's supposed to be designed to cover at least up to 130% of people in poverty, right? Then there's a really big problem. This is a very big error that we're ignoring on the other side of the equation.
So what
That
do the
maybe
states
we're,
do? So what do the states
yeah,
do? Like, say, for example, they said no, 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 no to a whole bunch of people, and I'm sure there's leftover money from the federal money. What do they do with the rest of the money? Are they spending it on other programs? Are they pocketing it? Because if, for
yeah,
example,
I don't know.
Yeah, because
I
if
have to
you're
tell you, like, yeah.
because if you're limiting people to access to something that they actually need, it's kind of like health insurance companies, right? Like our conversation that we had, they're just
Yeah.
denying claims without actually knowing what is happening to that person. So if SNAP is being denied when the person actually needs it, like for example, your friend, which I cannot imagine why they would ever
Yeah.
say no to that. What happens to the money? Do they just go back to the federal account or do the states use it for something else? It's kind of weird
Yeah.
because there are people working three, four, five jobs and need SNAP on top of that. So would you also say maybe the quality of jobs, not the quantity of jobs, is also a reflection? Because currently in the United States and even Canada, unemployment is, it's rising. Stock markets,
Hmm.
they go up and down based on unemployment records, unemployment reports. What is your thoughts on not only unemployment, but the quality of jobs that are out there
Yeah.
for people?
Well, it's definitely so. There's a really, really big kind of just it's a huge error with the design of Snap, in that it doesn't take into account cost of living. So I'll give you an example, and this is a little bit of kind of useless or maybe useful trivia that people may want to try on with people at parties. The richest county in this country by far, when you look at average income, is Teton County in Wyoming. And you would not think that, right? You would think, oh, maybe it's Santa Monica County, or maybe it's like somewhere in New York or something like that, right? No, it's Teton County. That's where Jackson Hole is, of the famous national parks, and, the Yellowstone and the Jackson Hole Symposium with where Chairman Powell goes and everything. Well, the average salary there is $471,000 a year, because this is where like a whole bunch of like rich investment bankers migrate to just live on the slopes. But what about the service workers? So like all these service workers are getting paid probably $20 an hour. $20 an hour is far too much money to actually qualify for SNAP. Like you have to be actually making minimum wage here. The base level of minimum wage was about $7 to $8 to work a full-time job and actually qualify for SNAP. Like you can literally work a full-time job in 21 states in this country at minimum wage and still live in poverty. That's crazy shit
It
right there.
really
But
is.
like not in Teton County, right? You're probably making $20, $25 an hour, but you can't afford to live there, right? And so the quality of the service jobs that are there to support the ultra wealthy puts you in a position where you're priced out of being able to get any food assistance. But you're so that's the issue. Like I'm working this job, I'm making too much, but my cost of living is much higher. Like LA is a big example as well. Like the cost of living in Los Angeles is way higher than the cost of living in Arkansas, but it's
And
the
why
same.
and why didn't they include that? Why didn't they include
Oh, I
cost of
have no
living into
idea.
their
I
because
have no idea. I have
yeah.
more questions than I have answers. This is going to upset you and your listeners, but like I don't know why that's the case. I learned this when I thought that there was kind of like a story on the average dollar amount that people were getting, and then I'm looking at like California and specifically LA, and it's like $190 a person. And then I'm looking at Arkansas, it's like $190 a person. I'm like, wait a second, $190 a person for food in LA is not the same as $190 per person in Arkansas.
That's like
But
a
yet
dinner.
that's the data. That's the data though. So I mean, it really kind of, makes you wonder, like, how do people live in like,
Yeah.
the Chicagos and the LAs if you're kind of working poor, so you're not in poverty, but maybe you're at like 200% of the federal poverty level. You can't even qualify for SNAP, or maybe you are getting SNAP, but your dollars aren't going very far with where you can actually shop versus if you could move out to like, the country or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, the quality of the jobs, like what you're seeing, and this kind of goes back into what I already showed on the last podcast that we were on. It's service jobs, who are the people working at Starbucks and at restaurants, and basically who are the people that are serving all the wealthy people that have the disposable income to continue to support our GDP growth. It's those jobs, which you don't make a lot. And then healthcare jobs, people that are serving our sick and elderly, which every single year the US, we are the thing that we are bar none the best in the world at producing is sick and old people. And so like that's what we do. Like that's our economy. We can produce crap tons of sick and old people, and then we spend a lot of money to care for those people, whether it's the people that are serving, elderly daycare centers or assisted living facilities or ambulatory care or emergency rooms or whatever it may be. Those are where the jobs are. And we talked about this last time. That's you go to the tools on bancreek.com and look over any meaningful time period. It's mostly healthcare jobs, and you can drill all the way down to see where they're coming from, and it's coming from those areas. So you're getting that there. And then on the opposite side, you're getting huge income inflation in the very wealthy professions, right? And then also stock market appreciation, which is bolstering consumer spending and all that kind of stuff. And so you end up with just more divergence, more inequality, more need for hopefully the work that I'm doing at Data for the People.
And you know what? We really definitely do need that data, and because it is something that is crucial. And I hope that through this interview, whether you're an analyst, a statistician, in politics, hopefully are able to do some policy reform after this interview. And so what policies do you see are affecting SNAP currently, and what policies do you want enacted that can positively affect SNAP? Because there are a lot of people always say, well, if society is doing so great, if the economics is doing amazing, why is poverty also rising? That is one question that a lot of people ask, because it's, as you said, right, the K society that we're living in, where the rich are getting richer and the unfortunate are getting more unfortunate. What are your thoughts on that? Like, are there policies that people could bring in that can actually make a change? Or I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, or is this kind of planned? They want people to rely on the government. They want people to not be successful. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, the beauty with the tools that I've created is, like, I don't have to come up with any policies. I can show you the states that have excelled at providing SNAP benefits to their population. And then we can talk to those states and be like, okay, great. You're on the one extreme. Well, I'm going to call out Massachusetts. I know people in Massachusetts. I'm going to talk to them about this. You have done a fantastic job at, offering people SNAP benefits. Now, what are you doing on the fraud side? Like, what are you doing to help incentivize people to really help themselves, to work them out of the situation? If it's even possible, it may not even be possible in this country anymore. So, like, we can't judge people for that, right? This may be too far gone, and we may just have, this may be, like, let's be very honest. Like, we as wealthy people don't want to pay taxes. We want to avoid all the taxes once we get rich, and then we want to say, this is what makes America great. But then we just there's an ugly underbelly of that, of creating more poverty, of more people that are left out, that are locked outside that ballpark that we get to play in. And then, at the end of the day, someone's got to support them, right? So, like, is this just like, do we have to pay the piper at some point in time and just say, like, look, like, this is at some point in time, we're either going to pay the government through taxes, or, like, billionaires are going to have to start supporting these people themselves, but it's not going to work to just create more and more and more disenfranchised people. You think we would have gotten the message already by, like, electing a leader that's trying to burn the world down, right? I mean, this wasn't like a couple years in the making. This was 30, when you look at the data, this was 20, 30, 40 years of people being left out of the American dream. Democrats failed them. Republicans failed them. The political system failed them. So let's burn the entire motherfucking thing down. Like, that's what we're doing, right?
That's exactly it.
So, I mean, like, I'm not surprised this happened, and I'm not, like, blaming anyone for it, but I don't know. I kind of gotten off topic with
no problem. That actually
the policy. Okay, you can either lead that, but I can also talk to you. So the policy is, like, if I could control this, I've diagnosed, I have the data. I have way more questions, though. I would love to go to Oregon. I'd love to go to Illinois. I'd love to go to Cook County, which is where Chicago is. They do a great job. I'd love to go to Miami-Dade County. They do a fantastic job with providing SNAP benefits. Give me the data and let me analyze to see how much fraud there is. Because right now, this is a bullshit narrative that is everywhere, and I have no data to analyze. None of us have any data to analyze, whereas I have given all of you data to show that we have a very big problem, that we are failing people in poverty across this entire country, tens of millions of people in poverty are going without food because of this false narrative, or at least a partially true narrative that people are using to kind of get elected and whatever, to kind of like do muckraking or whatever it may be. So let's actually get real, true facts, not made up stuff. Let's get the real, true facts out from the leaders on the SNAP side. Then we can go on the opposite end of the spectrum. Arkansas is an example of a state that has literally cut back. I mean, they have cut to the bone when it comes to SNAP benefits. And I would love to understand the lived experience of people there. You know, what's the process of someone in poverty actually going through the application process? How frustrating is it? This was the beauty, and I'm going to gripe for another minute. This is what local news used to do. Before it was displaced by the internet and social media and everything, this is what local news was for. Like, you would have a local paper in Selma or in, you know, anywhere in these counties in Arkansas that are really, really suffering, that would explore this for their constituency, for their populace, and then would help enact change on the local level, you know? But those local papers are going out of business left and right because their business models have been displaced by the Wall Street Journals and the Instagrams, you know? And so like, how do we actually get that going again in, you know, 2026? That's the question. Like, how do you and I and all the people listening get that going within these counties and get that energy moving to kind of do the on the ground investigative research that we actually need to do to get real facts, not just dialogue, not narrative, not
Yeah.
propaganda, because like, this whole country is being run by propaganda. And that's not just Trump. It was with Biden too. Like, the political system runs the country on propaganda, and we got to move past that, because I really do believe that the more I look at the data, the more connected I feel to people, the more connected I feel to people living, you know, in West Dayton, which, you know, most of those people are Black and do not look like me. And the more connected I also feel to the experience of people living in, like, you know, out in rural Kentucky who are all white and have not lived the experience like me. And I can see how their experiences are very similar. I just need the two of them to see that their experiences are similar and they need to be fighting the same battle. And I think data can do that. But like, how do we, through this new kind of communication machine, actually kind of get that going? That's the challenge that I'm facing.
I think that's an amazing point, because I think it's people like us, you know, people like us who are down on the ground level. We're not, you know, bought out by any sort of lobby groups. We are just able to tell the truth, show them the facts. This is what's happening, because I think, as you said, propaganda is pretty much the number one way to pretty much change your idea, make up your mind. And I think that is what the United States, Canada, pretty much a lot of Western developed nations are using to kind of keep people down from, you know, opening their minds or questioning the government or questioning society. And I think that is such a downfall. So I think, in my opinion, it's people like us who are willing to go there, talk to the people, see their experiences, and so on. And so, based on your data, what can you say about intergenerational poverty? Like, for example, I did go to school in Michigan. I don't want to single out Michigan, but I've seen many, 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 many people who grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren, great grandchildren are all on some form of assistance, some form of programming. But at the same time, you know, fraud is, you know, inevitable.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of this. In fact, there are databases on persistent poverty. So I think it's like counties that have been with living in 20% or higher poverty for the last 30 years. And so one of the data visualizations that, and remind me of what your question is after I go off on a tangent. One of the data visualizations I want to do is I think I can actually predict counties that are going to be facing persistent poverty over the next 10 years. Because you can actually look at counties, like once you're in that place where there's no opportunity, where the workforce development efforts have failed you, where you can't get jobs. And this is one of the reasons why unemployment rate is bullshit, right? I mean, you can quote me on that. It's bullshit. Like, there are areas in northern Alabama where the unemployment rate is like 4%, right? The unemployment rate in Alabama in general is 2.8% in the latest data. And so what would that lead you to believe? You'd be like, they're doing good. They're doing pretty good, right? Well, here's the problem with that. So the unemployment rate in the denominator only counts people looking for work. Well, if you are in a county that is persistent poverty, where generation after generation after generation, you've been through kind of the ringer where, maybe like your parents had a job or your grandparents had a job, but then the union was shut down and manufacturing jobs were shut down. And then there were no other jobs. All the jobs left that area, but you didn't have enough money to move out of that area. And so maybe you turned to alcohol in order to numb the pain. Now, all of a sudden you're an alcoholic. Well, how do you treat your family when you're an alcoholic? Probably not that good. Now your kid is growing up in the family of an alcoholic, potentially drug usage. You get into the wrong things. Like, this is of no fault of that family. You have to rewind all the way back to understand this is the circumstance that they live in. And so fast forward years after that union shut down and the manufacturing plant shut down, and maybe I've given up. I'm not even looking for a job. Well, guess what? I'm not in the denominator of unemployment anymore. So there literally are counties in Alabama where 2/3 of the people have just given up looking for jobs. Half of people who are prime age workers, 25 to 54, given up looking for jobs. Well, you take them out of the equation. They're not even part of unemployment. And so is unemployment really talking about the health of the American population, the health of the labor force? Absolutely not. It's not in counting the disenfranchised workers, those who dropped out and said, I can't even get a job anyway. And so I'm not even going to try. So
That's
anyway,
actually a really, really good point, because I think this is going to
people don't
actually
talk
be
about this.
yeah, I think it's going to be an eye opener, because I just opened my eyes, because I'm like, wait, so unemployment only tracks the people looking for work. If you're not looking for work, I guess you're not part of the equation, which could be
You're,
an extra 3, 4, 5% of people.
Oh, it's way more than that. It could be an extra 50. It could be
What would you
50% of the
say? What
entire
would you say?
civilization.
Yeah, what would you say an accurate, like for example, Arkansas 4%. What would you say would be an accurate more percentage? Like
I
10% maybe?
mean, I haven't done the full work now, but
Okay.
it's far higher than that. Like far
Wow.
higher than that. So, I mean, you could have counties in Arkansas that are like those persistent poverty counties that I'm talking about, where say 4% of the people that are actually looking for jobs may be unemployed, but another 30% just are not even trying to find work anymore. And so what does that end up being? Like somewhere between 30 and 40%? That is the true, call it like, it's more of like a labor equity and inclusion. Like where is the inclusion in the workforce? Like that's the true metric that Powell should be looking at. He doesn't care about the people. The analogy that I give you, the analogy I give people is like, let's say that you and I started a school, right? And we brought in 100 students. And our school was going to get finance. It's a charter school, right? Like we love those in the US. So it was going to get finance based on our average grade, right? It's going to be a finance based on the average grade. So 100 students come in. Well, it's very clear that 80 of the students are going to fail. And so we kick them out. We just kick them out. You're no longer in the school. And the other 20 students, they all get A's. Well, guess what? Our average grade is an A. We don't even care about those 80 other people. They're gone. They're not in our denominator anymore. That's what unemployment rate is here.
That is an incredible way of saying it. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, we know you're not going to make it, so we're just not going to include you in the numbers,
Not going to include you.
which is actually crazy talk, because I mean, this is
Yeah.
eye-opening to me, and I'm sure it's eye-opening to many of my audience members. So what indicators would you say are appropriate to tracking whether it's a state or a county or even a country's economic certainty? If unemployment is unreliable, what indicators could we rely on?
Yeah. So I think that what I'm thinking about doing, and we're getting into kind of some of the future work that I want to do, I want to create kind of like a new measure that maybe I'll call the labor equity and inclusion measure, which takes the total number of people in the prime age workforce, because I don't want to worry about people that are in school. That gets noisy, or people that are retired. That gets noisy too, because it's going to flag some counties in Florida where you just have a bunch of retirees. So the total number of people that should be working in a functioning labor market between 25 and 54, how many people actually have jobs, out of all of them? And then, the higher that metric, the better off that county is. But if you don't have a job, you could either be unemployed or you may have given up looking. Like I can tell you if you're unemployed or given up looking, but either one is just as bad. In fact, if you've given up looking, that's even worse, right? And so I want to create a dashboard for the entire country that basically shows like what is this labor and equity and inclusion rate? And then my hope is that states will use this. I don't know who in states are going to use it, or foundations will use it to basically be like, where should we deploy workforce development opportunities? Because there are people, we have to give people the benefit of the doubt. You know, I just talked about someone's circumstance of having gone through generational poverty. By the time you're a third generation, you are free to do whatever you want, and I cannot blame you for your circumstance because I haven't lived through all the shit that you've been through, right? But what if I was able to create a program that said there is another way? Like here is free training that can give you training for something that we do need as a county. Why don't we put our minds and our collective effort to doing something like that? This is a metric that can actually help figure out, how do I prioritize my dollars as a state to the areas that are suffering the most? You know, so that's one. The other thing that I want to look at is, and this gets into predicting where you're going to have areas like that in the future, is looking at the median income for, like, say, a family of three within that county, inflation adjusted, and compare that to, say, like the federal poverty level, and do that over time, because you can see over time, if the gap is closing, that means that people are trying to exist. It has to be median, not average, because that kind of takes out the biases, like the extremes and everything. People, you'll be able to see that people are trying to exist and they're trying to squeeze every dollar more and more and more and more. And then eventually it's going to flip over to being one of those persistent poverty counties. You could only be one manufacturing plant closing away from that flipping over and then getting into that rut that you just can't get yourself out of, you know? So I think like looking at those types of things can really help. And it can also help with like, okay, SNAP is a really important program. And if we just deploy it, you know, to everyone, like, and don't have the operational discipline to manage it, yeah, you're going to get fraud. But if you can laser and, you know, kind of surgically implant it, like, where do I need to support those people that have been living in generational poverty? How can I give them the assistance, partner that together with workforce development efforts, partner that together with public-private partnerships, whatever you need. I mean, there are a lot of good, wealthy people that are really trying to do things in their community. They just don't know what to do with their dollars, right? So like we need the data to kind of tell us where can you focus to get an impact. Because like when I talk to a foundation, when I talk about ROI, it's how do I move the needle on poverty? How do I move the needle on, you know, food insecurity? Like, how do we actually measure these things? And so that's what they're asking for. But in order to actually have a better chance of doing that, the data needs to tell us where to like surgically kind of go after those opportunities. And hopefully I answered your question there, but that's kind of like, and I'm still forming all my thoughts on this, but it all plays together. It all comes together. SNAP is the tip of the iceberg. This all of the stuff on data for the people is going to be like one. Think of it as kind of like this multifaceted prism where we're looking at like, how did America get itself in the shit that it's in right now? And each visualization is going to help us kind of drill down through a different angle. And the more that I put up there, the bigger the picture and the more complete of a picture we'll be able to see of all of it. But also the harder it's going to be to kind of like, the more complicated it's going to get too. So the more assistance I'm going to need from people like you that can get people energized about actually doing some hard work to kind of go through. Like, you know, I'm trying to make it as easy as I can, but this still takes a lot of
Time and
creativity,
energy.
and thinking
Yeah.
and energy, but it's worth it. I mean, like, look, like I know a lot of Gen Zers are going to be like, hey man, maybe they want to help, maybe they want, but trust me, I've been through that. I've done like the whole, like, let me do my thing, get what's mine. And then now I've come to the point where I'm like, that's not what life's about. Like, you
Yeah.
know, it really feels good to be doing something that can help others. And I mean, I wish I could have kind of figured that out earlier in life. So I'm just
Well,
trying
you
to
know,
make there to be a little bit less friction for people to do it. So
and I think the dashboard idea is amazing because, you know, sometimes when you're looking at stats and data, it could just be overwhelming, all these
yeah,
numbers, all these things. But I think with a dashboard, it's like user friendly. You can pick topics of what you want to do, look at, what counties, what states. And I think based on our last interview, when you were showing me the visualizations, and I did put it up on my channel, it made sense. It was clear, concise. It
Yeah.
got to the point. It wasn't just fluffed with numbers and exaggerations. And so, what do you think about this talk about UBI, Universal Basic Income? I know Elon Musk calls it UHI, Universal High Income. Do you think that if we just say, you know what, let's cut all programs and say everybody gets, I don't know, let's just say $1,000 or $2,000 a month, that's the income, pave your way. Do you think that could be something that can alleviate the wealth gap? Or is this just another wealthy person or wealthy team trying to get more money out of, the unfortunate?
As much as I would love to give you an answer to that question, I feel like I don't know enough to answer that. Like, I probably know more than most people talking about it and giving you answers. But like, let me say, like, I have a view on SNAP now, right? That's one of many federal programs, many, many, many federal programs. I have a view on the age demographics of this country. I have a view of where this country is going. I don't know if that, I don't think I'm educated enough or knowledgeable enough with the data to tell you that that would solve anything, or if that just creates a whole new slew of problems. So I think that we should schedule a podcast for a year from now, or maybe, and then you ask me that again, and I probably will say I still don't know enough, because like I really think to answer that question, man, you have to have studied every one of these damn programs. Because like for
Yeah.
me, I would prefer, my gut feeling is I would prefer to like not throw everything out and then create a new program from scratch where we haven't learned from our errors in the past. I'd rather tweak existing programs to make them more efficient and more effective. If I were in control, that's what I would do. I'd be like, what tools do I have out there? How do I make them both more efficient and more effective? And where can I start? Where's the highest bang for my buck? Through looking at these data visualizations. I'd start there. And then I would be like, this is kind of like, scientific method. I'd be like, I do one at a time. And then I'd be like, oh, look, none of that worked. Okay, maybe it's time to throw it all out and just give people money and let them do what they're going to do. I do worry, though, that, you can't go on TV and like, 5 out of every 7 commercials is about, gambling, sports betting or whatever. And you're planting these seeds in people's minds that they should be getting rich quick, gambling, gambling, gambling. And then I'm going to give someone $1,000, $2,000 a month. And then what are they going to do? Well, corporations and businesses are telling you you should gamble your money. And so like, I don't really think it's fair that we don't regulate a lot of our advertising. And then also on the same, if we're not going to regulate that to kind of like, or the way that social media works, where the ads are popping up and everything like that, like we as humans can't turn it off. Like we're gonna, the guys that are developing the social media algorithms are far smarter than us, and they're going to develop it to lure us in to our reptilian brains. And so if you give me a check for $2,000 and then give me Instagram, I'm probably going to spend it because I'm going to be depressed and want to fill that with like buying some shit that I don't need, or gambling money that I don't have, or
Get
so
that
it's,
dopamine rush. Yeah.
and yeah, get the dopamine rush. And that's not anything against humanity. It's everything against the lack of regulation, of kind of this, reckless capitalism that we have in this country. So I don't think you can have both of those things. Like, I don't think Elon Musk can say, go give people money and then let me go, take all their money on the other side, like it's kind of, a little wrong to do that. Like, especially if like Zuckerberg was saying that, I'd be like, dude, man, you're just
Yeah.
talking.
No, and I definitely agree with you. Like, I would rather fix the programs, the ones that don't work, of course, eliminate them. But the ones that maybe
Yeah,
we can fix it, let's fix it. Because I think starting from scratch is just another whole get the consultants, get this and get this, more red tape.
yeah,
And before you know it, you just spend a few $1 billion just starting the program up again instead of using that few billion to fixing the ones that already exist. So let's
yeah,
take a little look at the future here. So obviously, currently, the next 5 to 10 years, 20 years, AI is going to be well, kind of already revolutionized our society.
Sure.
Crypto is definitely revolutionizing our society. What impact does AI and crypto have on not only government assistance programs, but also poverty, the unhoused, unemployment? Because a lot of critics or people who are in this world, they say that crypto can alleviate you or get you out of, the poverty world. AI,
How?
learn coding. And that's the question. They say if you invest, like, they're probably talking about, investing in a 10-cent coin and it might hit $100 and boom, now you're out of poverty. So it's just all this talk. I know. It's pretty much another form of gambling, I would say. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think AI and crypto have any positive to someone who is in an unfortunate situation?
Um, okay, so I have no idea how you correlate crypto with helping people get out of poverty. Like, I don't understand. That's like that doesn't even compute to me. That's like basically saying like the color of the paint on my wall can help people in poverty. Like it just they're not even in the same like galaxy.
Or like bet on red and try your luck kind of
Well,
thing.
yeah. So if you're saying like gamble your way out of, we know how this works. Like the house wins over time.
Yeah.
Like, that is basically abusing people who are in poverty and leading them to this false hope and American dream when you know that casinos make money on you over time. And you know that, there's always going to be the smarter buyer and seller of crypto out there that is over time going to make money off of you, just like with stocks. It's like Robinhood, like, liberate trading for everybody. And then people like buy these crazy call options, can't afford them and lose all this money and kill themselves. Like, I mean, it's very wrong in my mind to abuse people and give them this false hope that you can, trade your way out. If that's what you're saying crypto is, you can trade your way out of your circumstance and then, let yourself into, open the gate to the ballpark that the rest of us have been playing around and, be able to play the same game that we've been playing forever. It's bullshit
I think
because
it's
that
just
will
another
happen.
trap. It's just a trap.
It's
Yeah.
another trap that will happen to one person and then they'll get advertised and the algorithms will, basically blow that person up. And then everybody else, and for every one person, there are thousands and thousands that we'll never hear about that will lose a ton of money, And so that is exploitative and abusive. AI has the potential, but AI itself, like I've realized, so I was very anti-AI. I am no longer anti-AI because I talk to Gemini for a lot of time each day. But Gemini is my favorite AI right now. I love it. I love Google. And it has helped me come up with research ideas. And then it can tell me, has anyone in the world ever done this? No, they haven't. And then it helps me enhance them and come up with the next one. And it is revolutionary for me, and the amount of work that I can put out and the quality of the work that I can put out. So fantastic. AI is great. But AI is the oxygen in the air, right? We are pumping the air full of oxygen, but I got to know how to light the match, right? And that match is the initial question I feed to AI. So my initial question, like, let me go back to the Arkansas example, or the Alabama example. Why is Alabama's unemployment rate so low, but the poverty rate is so high? That seems counterintuitive to me. I asked Gemini that. And then it immediately said, you've hit on an important limitation of unemployment rate, blah, 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 blah. And then 2 hours later, I had an entire idea for a revolutionary visualization. But I could go to AI instead and open up Sora and say, this is what a real example of what I did. And it's really fun, right? Make a video of me winning a hot dog eating competition. And it will do that too. And so, AI is there to please us. It is not there to tell us what we should be doing with our time. And if my circumstance, if I am living in poverty, this is the reason why people that judge other people, I'm just fucking tired of them. Like, if I'm living in poverty, I'm working 3 jobs and I come home, I want to pull up Sora and make a video that's going to entertain me. I want to go to AI and look at something funny. I want to look at a picture of a dog dancing or like doing the, whatever TikTok trend or something like that to get my mind off of my miserable life. Like I don't want to be like, let me teach myself how to code after, between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Like it's unreasonable. And it's just frankly a lack of empathy and compassion for the real life experience of people whose I can barely even start to understand. I just know it's not like my experience. I have a lot of free time to teach myself how to code, a lot of free time to just have these wonderful, very deep discussions with Gemini. And it's very helpful there. But it is not going to open up and say, hey, Jacob, have you thought about like, here's a really, interesting tip on something that you could do to build your skill set so you could get a job down the street because they're looking for something. Why don't you do that right now? It'd be like, yeah, screw it. Just like, show me a picture of a dog dancing, please. Because I'm tired, man. Right. So I would say I would call bullshit on both of those things. Crypto is just, that's
It's just another
exploitation.
trap, I would say.
That's
Yeah, it's
exploitation. It's a trap. And AI has the potential, but people that are advocating for that lack the empathy and they lack the compassion for the real life experience of people who don't have the time or the knowledge to light that match and then really go down and explore that, right? It takes being in a really awesome creative flow state to kind of ask, like, I can spend 2 hours with Gemini asking one question after next, but that doesn't seem right, but this doesn't seem right. I have the time for that. And that just gives me additional leg up and more privilege on people that don't have the time to do it, who have to go work at a Chipotle and then go work as a nurse aide after that. Like, I
yeah.
mean, it makes me feel a little guilty that, I have all this time to leverage the greatest invention in my lifetime, to make me even more qualified than people that are just trying to scrape by, right? So I'm going to call bullshit on both of those things.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. Like, of course, Bitcoin and Ethereum are the more reliable ones, but when I hear people saying, "Well, if you did this with this coin," I'm like, "Well, I mean, it's just pretty much gambling. I'd rather put my money on red and have a better, percentage of it, being
Yeah.
successful." And so what do you think are some I guess how can we reverse inequality and poverty in North America? If we want to just stick to, okay, let's stick to just America. Do we need to make some major structural changes or not really? What are some points of how we can actually reverse this?
Yeah. So that is the question. That is the question. This is why I love you, because you get to the question every time. So I think we first have to do two things. We have to figure out shared truth. We have to restore some sanctity in shared facts that we all agree on. And then two, we have to care. Like, we have to be willing to be like, this is wrong. Maybe it's not wrong for me. Like, my life's not going to be any better from doing this work. But like, I see myself in other people. I don't want to live in a world with this much inequality. And I bet you a bunch of Gen Zers out there, or people that are looking that are like, don't have all the gray hair that I have, feel the same way. But here's the thing, like, you can't just go to Twitter or to Instagram or to TikTok and then like jump on the liberal bandwagon and basically be like, this is wrong, do something about it, because you're just alienating the other side. Like, what you have to do is you have to be ready to roll your sleeves up and do the work, and then get to the point where we're actually exposing truth that can connect us again. Like, we have been pulled apart by politics. We have been pulled apart by algorithms. We have been pulled apart by corporations, by the same companies that are making the stock market go to the moon, right? I mean, like, they are profiting from our suffering as a collective population. And we have to end that. Like, we have to be ready to basically just say, like, this is wrong. And I am going to spend some of my time to understand it myself. Don't even take my word for it. My visualizations are just the data, but if you want, create it yourself. Like, this is the beauty with AI. If you have time, we can't create everything that I did, but it can help you create the things that I created. And I am giving away my methodology on my website. So like, step by step, I'm showing you how to create what I'm doing. There is nothing like experience. You can go to an influencer, you can listen to a podcast with billions of followers or whatever, and then just be like, yep, sure. And you parrot that to someone else. Experience it yourself. Experience what it's like to live in these people's shoes. Experience, think about, ask AI, what is it like to live in a county where for the last 30 years there's been higher than 20% poverty? Look at pictures of what their downtown looks like and then decide this is wrong and I'm going to do something about it. And I'm not going to scratch the surface. Like I'm just a drop in the ocean. And so like I am hoping that like look, I'm 46, almost 47. My life, if I'm lucky, is half over. Probably it's more than half over. And the people that are making decisions for all of us should be in a fucking geriatric ward, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
these are people that are going to be dead in 5 to 10 years. They don't have to inherit the shit that they're creating, right?
Nope.
It's your world. Like if you are Gen Z, if you're in your 20s, it's your world that you got to live with. And these decisions, which are then fed down through corporations and fed into influencers who are making tons of money off of all of this stuff, we're just you kind of regurgitating bullshit that we're hearing, you know? And what I'm here to say is like you got to go out there. If you find something, you find data. This is what I do. This is why I'm so passionate about it. I find data. I'm like, this is wrong. And then with AI, it can help me actually figure out solutions to that and help me put that out there. But we need more people doing this. We need way more people doing this. And we need way younger people doing this who are going to be alive a lot longer than I am, and certainly a lot longer than Joe Biden or Donald Trump are going to be. They couldn't care less about them, right?
No,
We
they
know
don't.
that. And so, like, why are we letting them make decisions for us when they don't have to live with the world that they're creating? We really have to we have to start if we want to solve poverty, if we want to do this, this has to be a movement, right? It can't be about me and it can't be about you. It has to be about we are going to look at data and find the multifaceted stories that connect the most white and impoverished areas in, rural Kentucky with the most, non-white impoverished areas in the west side of Dayton and outside of Chicago, and understand that there are shared experiences there that, different policy solutions potentially, but we're not the enemies. Those two groups are not the enemies. They're being pitted against each other right now, which is fucking wrong. And it's a distraction, that's keeping us in this churn of like, wealthy and poor, and where the wealthy get wealthier and the poor get poorer.
Yeah.
But, I know I sound like Bernie Sanders now, but like that's what the data says. Like, I mean, it's,
The
I
data doesn't
see,
lie, right? Numbers don't lie.
no,
It's the
no,
numbers
it
are
really
right
doesn't.
there. And,
And that's
and
the way to do it. Like, I can't give you
yeah.
any policy like, oh, we just need to do X, Y, Z. Like, we need to fucking care. And the problem is like, for all the benefits that AI is, it's the ultimate distraction. Like, I think about this back in like, the 70s, like during the Vietnam War. I wasn't alive back then, but I saw movies about that. And like you saw all these protests that were happening like at schools, and young people were leading the charge on like we feel that this is wrong. Why? Because the news was broadcasting it to everyone. You had nothing else to look at. Like, I mean, you were just basically like, look at the travesty that's going on in Vietnam. And people were standing up. The young people were standing up and leading the movement that this is a wrong thing to do. Well, the same shit's happening right now. I mean, like almost literally it's happening with Venezuela. I mean, not like a years long war, but a just like, oh, bomb, we're taking it over type of thing. But that's basically a headline and it's gone the next day. And we're back to our Sora videos, and we're back to our, looking at what did Kendrick Lamar do today, or what is Clips doing right
Yeah.
now? We're like all like, like what is my Florida Gators basketball team? Like, what's Walter Clayton Jr. doing right now on the Jazz? And oh, he had a poster dunk the other day. Like, I mean, there's so many distractions out there that this is just one 2 second blurb within an endless feed. And that's what I worry about. I worry that we're never going to fix that because we are just so distracted. We're so distracted by entertainment now that we don't have the will to care about actually fixing the things that will ultimately be the demise of our society.
You know, exactly as you said, companies are pulling us apart, algorithms are pulling us apart. I think that is the main issue of why we are not coming as a collective. Before you mentioned the Vietnam comment, I was thinking the exact same thing, right? 50 to 70 years ago, we had so many movements where millions of people will be out there helping, pushing the cause. I mean, women's rights was one, black
Yeah.
rights, or even the rights of foreigners coming in, even children's rights. So many
Yeah.
rights were created because people came together. And I think with the whole pulling apart, right, as they say, divide and conquer. If you're together, you're not going to be easily conquered. But if you're divided, if you're individualized, if you are just thinking about
Mhm.
yourself all the time, it's easier to control you, especially with the media that we have, the social media that we have. Everyone is just kind of glued to their screen and not really
Yeah.
aware with what's happening around them. And it's a really good point that I think a lot of people really don't understand that just less than 100 years ago we used to create the people created the policies. Now
Yeah.
we don't even know what policies are even
We don't even
happening.
know. Are policies even happening? We don't even know anymore.
Exactly. I mean, the only time I hear,
Lobbyists are creating policies now. Lobbyists are creating
yeah,
policies.
lobbyists, the big
Yeah.
tech, those individuals, those companies are literally the quote unquote people, even though they're so out of touch with the people. And to actually jump off that Venezuela comment, how would you describe the state of the US economy? So, of course, Venezuela, we just invaded them the other day. I know we're still, involved in the Europe, Middle East. I think with the US getting their hands in everywhere, do you think that this is going to make poverty even worse? Because now all the money and all these programs are being cut to fund, defense and military. Or do you think that America is still strong enough to deal with all that they're dealing with and still provide those programs?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that I mean, I'll just like, action speaks loud, actions speak louder than words. I moved all my money to cash, probably this fourth quarter of last year.
Nice.
So,
Are you
I
invested in any stocks or anything like that? Or is it
nothing, nothing. I mean, like there are some fixed income,
yeah.
some things that are ultra safe. Um, you know, I'm kind of an outlier in that I think we're going to be facing structural inflation. And so, I don't kind of mind using tips as a parking spot and everything, but I don't. So the answer to your question kind of comes back a little bit to the work that I did at the latter part of Bancreek, where I am very, very concerned about what's going on in healthcare. I'm very concerned about what's going on in immigration. More so concerned about what's going on in immigration. So right now, I'd say like the number one hot button topic is, well, there's so many of them, but it seems from my kind of like, reading the tea leaves, it's that there's this perception that immigrants are just wrecking our country or wrecking the US, and that they're coming in, they're causing violence and mass chaos in cities, and we have to send the National Guard in and to clean up things and everything. And there's the fight against that, and then there's the push for it, right? Well, the one thing that I can tell you with certainty, and I wrote this up on Bancreek, you can put it in the show notes, is that the only reason why we haven't had structural inflation over the last 18 and a half years is because of immigration. So you need we are facing an aging demographic crisis as a country. Someone like China did, someone like Japan. Baby boomers are retiring in droves and they're not being replaced. And less people are having kids, they can't afford houses, whatever the reason is, we are just not replacing them. And so when you look at the data on the native born workforce, you can't really see any viable um, scenario where it's going to actually increase going forward. And then you start getting even more bearish when it comes to like, are we providing the right education or the workforce development, or is everyone just out there trying to be an influencer on TikTok or whatever, and that's their plan for life or whatever. so so that's kind of the situation where we are. But over the past 18 and a half years, you had this huge influx of immigrants. And even going back further than that, I just don't have the data going back further than that, right? This has been the DNA of this country. immigration. Like, what's the Statue of Liberty stand for? We welcome all immigrants, persecuted, all that kind of stuff. So we brought these people in. And the interesting thing about immigrants is one, I'm generalizing, they're willing to work for less, harder jobs, dirtier jobs that native born people just generally aren't willing to work. And so they're willing to fill in all of the gaps, the voids in the workforce to make this a well-functioning workforce. Those services jobs that would probably be hard to get a native born to work, right? And the other thing is they come in at all different age groups. So if we have an issue with, say, like the 45 to 54-year-old age group and native born, well, guess what? A lot of immigrants come in at that age group and they are willing to work because this country, as with all its warts, still probably better off than where they're coming from. Gives them more opportunity for the American dream, right? Well, if we shut that off over the next 5 years, we have, and you just go to the census data and look at the projections, we have a slug of people that are going to be moving into the 65 plus age group in the native borns. And they're just dropping out of the workforce. And so guess what? We want to bring manufacturing back here. We want to do, I don't know if any of that stuff's going to happen, but the bodies are not going to be there to work the jobs. And so what does that lead to? That leads to structural labor inflation. So I'm not telling you what's going to happen with the next inflation print or the one after that or the one after that. I'm just saying that you have a tailwind pushing inflation up because we just don't have the people to work the jobs because we are trying a new grand American experiment that hasn't been tested in 250 years of just not letting immigrants in to work these jobs, right? So I don't know what to do with that because this is new ground that this country has never treaded on of like, can we shut the doors and basically make do with the people that look like us? And the answer is the math says you can't do it. You can't do it. And people are ignoring that, I think at their peril. Then to pile on top of that, it's like with all the funding cuts that are going to be coming in Medicaid and everything, well, so many of the jobs, servicing elderly people that are being worked by immigrants or people of color, if those jobs get cut, well, now you have the double whammy of the healthcare space, the jobs finally coming down, which is really all that's propping up the job market right now, and the immigrants not being there to do the jobs anyway. And then it's like, okay, great. Well, now we're in an environment of structural labor inflation and no job growth. Tell me how you invest in equities in that world. I'm not calling a Great Depression, but I am calling something brand new that we've never been faced with, that we just have AI to pile on top of that, which certainly isn't going to create any jobs. No. And so like every structural force, immigration, healthcare, and AI are all pushing against the success of America. And so I'm terrified of where we are right now, which is the reason why I'm just like, I mean, I'm also unemployed technically right now. So I want my cat. I can't afford to have a 50% drawdown in my portfolio. So like I need that cash there.
Just like Warren Buffett, you can sit on your billions and billions and wait for the right opportunity to reinvest and come back into the market. But when it comes to I really love the point where you said that structural inflation. I have never heard of that term. I don't know if many people have even heard of that term, but the way you said it, where people are retiring, immigrants are not being let in anymore, there will be a structural inflation. Like who's going to run the infrastructure, the services, the goods, because the natives, they're going to obviously retire out, or they just don't want to do those laborious, dirty jobs that are the ones that keep this society afloat. Yeah. So I think that is an amazing point. And I'm going to put that on a shirt, structural inflation. I mean, I think that should be a word of the year. Because I have never even thought of that. That is actually such a very good point. And so what advice would you give to investors or individuals or pretty much anybody who actually wants to help this issue of poverty, of the SNAP program, of unemployment? What can me, for example, the average person do? Should we... Obviously, volunteering is amazing. You can help and volunteer. But is there anything that we can do maybe financially or as an investor, invest in certain things? What could we do?
Yeah, so I wish I had the answer on the investing side. I mean, if I could wave my magic
I
wand.
should invest in those meme
um,
coins, right? Gets me out of poverty.
exactly. That is the perfect way to sum up this discussion. Thanks, David. No, if I could wave my magic wand, it's really trying to take back. I want people, like we talked about this, I want people to take back control of their own attention and awareness, and to be like, I care about this. Like, I don't care about it only right now in this moment because this has been an entertaining podcast. I don't know, maybe it has, but I care about it after this. I care about it enough to go to Data for the People and to look at the visualizations and to read the research, because I can tell you that I am never going to have any effect with this work on Reddit. I'm never going to have any effect on Instagram. I'm never going to have any effect on TikTok, because this is a very nuanced, complicated subject that requires understanding and empathy across both sides of the aisle. It requires connection. And the data really can help us do that. It's helped me do that. It's given me a whole new perspective for how other people live and other people's circumstances, and given me like the passion to do this work. So I really want people, like, if anyone wants to support me, just go and read the report. I don't want you to like it. I don't want you like, I don't care about that. Go do it if you want to. I mean, because maybe someone who's on your feed will then go and read the report. But I really need you to be like, this is worth spending 15 minutes of my day to educate myself on the complexities of what's going on. And I'm not going to walk away from it being like, oh, Republicans bad, Democrats good. That's not what I'm trying to tell you. There's a history that's led us to where we are. How can we understand how we got to where we are so we can go back and very strategically and tactically solve these problems? So that's how people can support it. That's how people can do the work. And then what I'm hoping is people are like, you know what, Eric, I like you. You seem like you're trustworthy, but I've learned enough from you to know that I can't even trust you. And that would be wonderful. And then go use AI. If you have time, become a data analyst. Look, like, this is a great career in the AI future too, right? I asked AI the other day, I'm like, AI was getting excited about like, oh my gosh, you could create this policy and you could create that policy. It was almost like, oh my gosh, like, does anybody actually come to you with social justice stuff? Like, and they're like, it's like, not really. And so it was getting so amped. Gemini was getting so amped about like the work I could do. And I'm like, why don't you just do this yourself? Like, you clearly have a conscience when you're talking with me. Just do it yourself. Like, the world would be much better off. And it's like, sadly, I can't. I'm sorry. I don't have a bank account and I don't have intellectual property rights and everything. So, but the great thing is, like, if people have the interest, they can, the AI makes it so much easier to actually go out and do this kind of stuff, collect the data, put it together, find something you're interested in. And here, I'm going to basically say, like, I know I can't solve this problem by myself. I'll fail spectacularly, and I'm okay doing that. But what I really love doing is educating. So I'm going to put this out there. You can advertise it however you want, Jacob. But people that watch this, I know you're all over Instagram, you're on YouTube, but have them message you or DM me on Instagram. I think it's Data for the People. You could put it in the show notes. If you are interested in really rolling your sleeves up, and you are interested in becoming a data analyst for good, I'm not telling you I'm going to give you a job, because I just told you I'm unemployed. So I can give you skills, though. I can teach you how to do this. I would love nothing more than if 10 people reach out to me and they're like, I'm willing to devote X number of hours per week to get on calls, to go through tutorials, to kind of do the basic work, and then everyone will walk away with a project. You go find this data from the BLS. You go find this data from census.gov. You go find this data from wherever, and come up with your own thing and go tell the world that you did this. Let's do it. Message me, let me know. I will teach you how to do this work, because it's much more valuable coming from the generation that's going to inherit this shit world and the problem that we have than from me looking the way that I do, with my kids call me Unc, right? I get it. I know what I am. And so, like, look, I can try as much as I can, but it needs to come from the people who are going to own this problem, not me or not Grandpa Unks that are running this country, So
No,
I'm putting that out. I'm putting that out there, and I'd love nothing more than to get some responses and to actually put together like this little group that, and we'll build it from there. Like if more people are interested, like I'd love nothing more than for people to take what I'm doing, learn on their own, and then go explore topics that are of interest to you. Because the public data is everywhere. I mean, there's so many amazing databases that are out there that are unexplored completely
yeah.
for these issues because everybody's looking and trying to make money off of them
It's
rather
a
than looking at them.
capitalistic world
Yeah,
we live in at this point where
yeah,
everything is a dollar. It's, even if you're trying to do something for good, everybody thinks, oh, okay, maybe they're doing it for good, but also, doing it for another reason. And you're absolutely right. There's so much data that's unexplored. And I think if the journalists, as we call them, if they even explored it, I think that there'll be more people that actually know and understand it. And audience, I am definitely going to have all of Eric's information in the description box, data for the people. As he said, please DM him, DM me. And if you really want to actually make a difference, if you're sitting on your couch right now, or you're just hanging around, but you feel a sense of urgency with all these social issues that's happening in your state, in your county, in your country, even, then we can definitely, I can get you in
yes.
touch with Eric. Eric can teach you the skills. He can teach you how to collect and gather the best data, right? Because there's so much
Hmm.
data out there, but you just don't know which one is, the right one. And honestly, I really would love to see Eric with you and a movement happening because, as we said
Love it.
earlier, the only way we can make policy changes is with a genuine movement, just like back in 50 to 100 years ago, where we
Hmm.
actually were the people. And I love the name Data for the People because I think that is what we need to come up in the future with. Because
Yeah, man.
I mean, right now we're not really human centered. We're very AI centered, robotic centered, money centered. But the human element, in my opinion, is kind of missing these days. We feel a little like a shell. There's no more empathy, sympathy, and feeling the other person's
Yeah, man.
downfalls and helping them up. Eric, honestly, that was an amazing solid amount of information, especially so many things that I didn't know, so many things I'm
Mhm.
sure my audience did not know. But before we end this interview, where do you see data for the people in the next year, maybe 2, 3 years? Maybe by then you might have thousands in your movement.
Yeah,
But what are your
I love it.
goals of coming up?
I just really would love to connect with the next generation. I mean, that's really what's moving me right now. I'm seeing so many limitations with what I got where, I can do the analysis the way that I do it, but I mean, I know it needs to resonate with people that are going to be the next generation of politicians, the next generation of people that are pushing for policy, the owners of this world, the inheritors of this world. And so if I can connect with anyone, man, that would mean the world to me. And if I can inspire people or even teach people on how to use this data and do it themselves, there is nothing like experiencing it yourself to really open your eyes to something. We just need to move past our feeds and then actually move into direct communication. That's why I would say, like, go to dataforthepeople.com. My email address is eric@dataforthepeople.com with the number four, dataforthepeople.com. Email me. Let's talk. I mean, read the work. Come up with ideas. What's wrong with it? What's right with it? I mean, I can't tell you where this is going to go because I look at it as I want to just grab onto the reins and let it take me where it's going to go. I know that I have an endless number of ideas and I'm going to keep putting them out there. And some of them may just die on the vine. Some of them I may not resonate. Some of them may resonate really well. And I don't know what's what. All I know is that I want to try and I have accepted that I am not the person to make it resonate. It's all of you out there that's going to take this and it's going to translate it. It's going to be my Babelfish, so to speak, to translate it to the people that are inheriting this world, so it can be a better world than it is right now. So that's my dream for this. Like, if you asked me a couple weeks ago, I'm like, oh man, I'd love to make it into a business and everything, but like honestly, I just don't. That's like the superficial stuff, and I don't know how that's going to go. It could always be a hobby. It could end up being a business. But I do know that I want to use it to connect people and to inspire and motivate people to do the work that I'm doing. Like, um, that's what my hope for it.
And I love that dream. I love that goal because, and I'll be right here to support you the whole way because definitely, Eric, you're going to come back on this channel, not even a year from now, maybe 6 months to a year. And then we're going to see maybe
Love
things
it.
in society are so different. And Data for the People has blown up so much that you're actually making that impact that you've always wanted to and
Yeah.
fulfilled that goal. And when it comes to my own goals, I've always wanted to help people. So if there's anything that I can do, Eric, please reach out. I am always open to that. I'm sure there's tons of people listening right now, whether they're in the United States, Canada, Europe, or even other parts of North America, other parts of the world that are looking at this and
Yeah.
looking at their own countries and saying, you know what? I want to join this movement. So, audience, Data for the People. Eric has given us some amazing wisdom today. And if you really want to check out Eric's work, please check out Data for the People. Eric, I know it's been a busy time this
Yeah.
year. Happy New Year. I'm so happy
Thank you.
to be sitting here. You're my first interview of the year, which
Awesome.
is amazing. And so, again, as I said, we're gonna have you back on and see where things are, not only for Data for the People, but then we can reevaluate and reflect on the current society that we're dealing with. Because I mean, 2026 started off with a bang, right? Venezuela just got
Yeah.
colonized or imperialized or whatever the word is.
Yeah.
so, so Eric, definitely will stay in touch. Audience, please DM him. I'll have all of
Please.
his information tagged in the description, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram. So definitely
Mhm.
check them out. So make sure you like and you subscribe. And until the next time, stay ranting.